It comes back to a mentality that we have about how we perceive black and brown people, how we perceive darker people to be a threat. Am I wrong? And so when I think about policing and what it should look like, I think about my hometown. If you're from Houston, you're probably familiar with Port Arthur, which is just southeast of here. So I'm from Port Arthur. I didn't know there was an issue with policing until I moved to Austin. Because where I'm from, we're actually connected to our officers. Our officers are our former classmates. They're our church mates. We go to games together. And if they have to be called, because I'm also from a community that if something's going on in your neighborhood, my dad started the neighborhood watch, y'all. When I was in elementary, I grew up around drug dealers and prostitutes and gangbangers. And one day my dad, who was a senior citizen when I was born, and his friends came up with the neighborhood watch. It wasn't the police that changed my neighborhood. They were a support system if we needed to call them, but my neighborhood got tired of my neighborhood looking like that. And I think we need to get back to that. But we also need to have officers that if they do need to be called in, they need to be like the officer that I called when our neighbor, thank God she's gone, she was making too much noise. And I had gone over as a friendly neighbor and asked her to turn down her music. Our kids were trying to sleep. We had to call the police. The officer came over. He was very calm. He knocked on the door and he spoke with them as if they were human beings. He did not assume that the people at that residence as if they were a threat to him. He did not go in with that mentality. And that's what we're seeing too much of in our country. If I hear the term, I was fearful for my life. One more time from an officer. If you are that afraid, then you should not be on the police force.
That's right.
And I don't want us to act like this is the only, I will not start preaching, I'm sorry y'all, but I don't want us to act like it is the only profession, because it's an excuse. And the reason why I know is because that's not the only profession where you have these types of dangers. I was a teacher. There are people who try to sell drugs in my class. There are people who bring guns to school. Ask Sandy Hook what happens when you work at a school and how a teacher and teachers died to save the children at that school. But I don't get to brutalize my students because there's a random fight and I was afraid for my life. So I get to shoot my students. I get to attack them. And so we have to address all of the police culture. We're talking about the school to prison pipeline, how we allow our officers to act, how we allow them to be chosen, and then those who are already in office be in that position. If we see that you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and it actually happened in Williamson County, of all the places in the world, if y'all know Williamson County, Wilco has the reputation for, it says you come on vacation, you leave on probation. That really is the belief about Williamson County, which is just north of Travis County. They found out the sheriff's office found out 2 of the officers in their county were in the KKK. And they were fired.
Good. Progress. Yes.
That is progress. That is progress. And progress is also if they get fired, much like the officer that was involved in a shooting back in February in Austin, is if don't hire him back. Just because he didn't get prosecuted, that's a problem with the DA's office right there. We won't even get into that. But don't hire him back because someone still died. And if he's saying he's afraid, he needs to go do something else. That's a whole lot safer. Do not let him back on the force.